right, hello everyone. I'm your host, Joseph Weinseck, and welcome to this Cycle 360 edition with AACC's distinguished president, Dr. David Grenache. Dr. David Grenache is also the Chief Scientific Officer at Tricor Labs in New Mexico. Great to have you on this edition, Dr. Grenache.
Oh, thanks very much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited that you reached out to me and wanted to talk to me. So thank you.
Well, that's great. So we'll go in through a few questions that kind of came up and that I think that the viewers would like to hear about just from your perspective as AACC's president, as well as longtime Laboratorian. So you probably know, and many others know, that I'm really big into history. Well, this past year, we set ourselves a kind of a historical event with AACC going an all virtual event. So this was the first time ever. And so as we were leading up to this historic event, were there some things that you were looking forward to? Like what was the most exciting thing that you might have been looking forward to? And then once the meeting actually happened, what did you see as like one of the most enjoyable moments of the meeting itself?
Yeah, no, great question. Leading up to the meeting, I was really excited to see how the virtual platform would work. We kept on, we were being told from AACC staff that it looked great and it was going to be very interactive, and there was a lot of work that went on behind the scenes to pull it off. But I had never really spent any time in it until it opened right to everyone. And it was exciting to dive into it and click on all the different options and see what lurked behind those icons and the curtains. So I guess I was most excited about that. And during the meeting, I think what I found I'm not quite sure it was the most enjoyable thing, but it was the most convenient thing, was the on-demand education, right? Because I could turn it off and on, I could do it when I wanted to. That said, the Simulive sessions, you really had to attend in real time if you wanted to engage with the speakers with the Q&A. So I did enjoy that a lot. It was an interesting way to interact, much different, of course, than we typically do in a face-to-face meeting. But I think that's what I found really most enjoyable was the on-demand, because I could consume this content and gain knowledge on my own time. And then the Simulive stuff was pretty neat.
Yes, and thanks for those responses. I absolutely agree with you. The ability to kind of go back and look at these sessions, and I think what's been a challenge in the past is there's been so many great sessions, and they kind of all line up with each other, and you almost would have to pick and cherry pick to go to the one that you really wanted to go to. So I agree, like having the ability to go back and look through some sessions there has been one of my favorite things and enjoyable experiences with the virtual platform this year. So I'm really curious, and if I'm curious if other people are about this as well. So you get notified as AACC president, basically through a list of probably emails and chains and things like that. What are some of the first thoughts that come to your mind and kind of goals that you were thinking when you received that message, or at least in the first month or two after kind of hearing about it? And, with COVID-19 happening, like how did you have to like recalibrate some of those goals that you had set initially starting out in the presidency?
Yeah. Well, just to put a timeline onto things, I learned that I had been nominated to be slated as president-elect in the spring of 2018. And I didn't become president until the summer of 2020. So it was really over 2 years, right, that I had. The first time it was from like the spring of 18 to January of 2019. In January 19 is when I became president-elect. And because of our transition period to, as part of the new governance structure where leadership changes occur during the annual meeting, I was president-elect for 18 months, for a year and a half. So I had a lot of time to think about, what did I want to hope to accomplish during my 1 year as the association's president. And I was fortunate enough to, when I rejoined the board as the president-elect in January of 2019, that was the year that we undertook the effort to readdress and revise and update the association's strategic plan. So that was quite exciting for me to be participatory in the framework in creating the strategic plan that we launched in the following year. And it's really exciting, right, to be part of that. And so then I could once that was in place, I could calibrate my thought process to really what I wanted to accomplish during my year as president. And people watching this interview might not be super familiar with all of the goal areas of the strategic plan, but there are 5. I just want to run through them, and then I'll tell you the ones I'm most excited about. So there's one of the goal areas is scientific advancement. There's brand positioning, advocacy and influence, data analytics, and the value of lab medicine. And I was very excited in my year as president to really focus on and work towards realizing some of the objectives under that value of lab medicine goal area. I mean, to be clear, all of the areas are important, right? We wouldn't have them in a strategic plan if they weren't. But the value one really resonates with me personally and professionally. Part of that is due to the work that I do in my job here at SYCL reference labs in Albuquerque, where we leverage the power of our laboratory data warehouse to improve population health. And I think we've demonstrated, and not just we here at TriCor, but we as the profession are starting to build an evidence base that really does speak to the power of laboratory medicine to affect downstream events, patient outcomes, and costs of care in ways that are very different from how we traditionally look at laboratory value, which is the transaction, right, the individual results. So that, for me, in my year as president, was something I really wanted to focus on. Well, then came COVID, right? So that has been, no doubt about it. The pandemic has drastically altered everyone's lives, professionally and personally, and it's been a big game changer. And it certainly had an effect on the association, on AACC. And so we had to recalibrate and refocus our energies. The board had already started to prioritize areas of the strategic plan. The value proposition was one of them. But then when the pandemic came, it was really just rally the troops and focus on, a lot of the focus was on the annual meeting and how that would evolve and adapt to the pandemic. So while we've had to put some of the emphasis on the strategic plan on the back burner while we responded to this crisis situation, we're starting to emerge. I hope 2021 is the year of emergence of the pandemic, and learn how to live with it just learn how to adapt to life with COVID. And so with that said, I think now we can start to gradually make our way back to focusing on the elements of the strategic plan that the board had prioritized. And frankly, we've started an exercise where we start to consider, in light of the pandemic, where do we refocus our priorities? And I think that, and I hope people agree with me, that this last year, 2020, laboratory medicine and laboratory medicine professionals had a big, bright spotlight shining on them. And I think now is the time that we should leverage this unique opportunity to really speak to and work towards demonstrating the value of the lab. We have generated an enormous amount of data in the last year that we could use to our advantage.
Well, thank you for providing that great perspective on kind of the before becoming president and after, and then kind of having to pivot with COVID-19. And I can definitely speak to the testament of seeing some of the value of lab medicine and the data that you have provided through a few talks that I've watched over the years. So great efforts, I think, on that end, and hopefully something that we all can adopt in the future. So two kind of additional questions that I kind of have are, it's been kind of kind of like an anxious or stressful kind of thing, like you had mentioned during our conversation, that it's not only affected our workday lives, but also our personal lives. And so, what are some things that you may have done to kind of mitigate those just overall stressors in your life by doing something else than work?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking that question. To be clear, work has, our careers are usually very busy. I think they they have become exceptionally more busy over the past many months. I'm glad I really like what I do and that I enjoy my job and my career. So I don't mind bringing home work with me and working on it, even at times where I should be putting it aside and refocusing my energies on something else. I think to answer your question, uh, I have done. I do work at home. I'm sure we all do, and I'm fortunate, and I'm glad that I enjoy most of what I have to do at home. But when I do put work aside, and it does have to, for me, it has to be an intentional decision. Otherwise, I'll just keep doing it. So I put it aside, I try to spend time enjoying the things, the hobbies that I've always enjoyed. For me, landscape photography is a passion of mine, and it's something that was not affected by the pandemic, right? It was an existing hobby where you generally spend a lot of time by yourself outdoors, which, in a pandemic, it tends to work out pretty well. I'm also fortunate to live in the southwestern part of the U.S., and there's lots of open, empty space in New Mexico and Arizona and Utah, and getting out to those places is very easy, and with phenomenal grandeur and beauty to photograph. So I've spent some time doing that. I took a road trip in November by myself down to southern New Mexico and into Arizona just to do photography. I also took advantage of this extended period of time where our normal lives are disrupted, and I bought a drone and a drone to do photography with. So I've been elevating, pun intended, my photography skills by utilizing a drone to do some photography.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. I can say that I do have like a very amateur enjoyment of seeing landscape photography, and so I've come across a few pictures on various sites that you're on, and so it was something that I was thinking that you might be interested in, and just kind of reaffirm that that is a love and passion of yours, and what a beautiful place to be taking pictures too. So that's great. So I have about one more question to ask for you, and it's kind of, I guess, for those young people that are coming up in the graduate or even just entering this career, as maybe they have pivoted and found a new found passion or love for lab medicine after some of the events that have happened in the past year. You know, yeah, knowing that you have this experience and breadth and passion for lab medicine, going back to that person that you were when you first started, what's something you might have told yourself to either expect or just something you wanted to know at that time, as you kind of went out on this adventure of a career-long love of what you do?
Yeah. Um, it's fun to think back. Well, what advice do you give yourself? Um, a few things come to mind. I think the first one would be trust your instincts. Unless you have reason to believe that they're leading you astray, generally your instincts are correct. Um, I, I think it's really important to acknowledge that it's okay to make mistakes. That's one sure way to learn and to grow. I've learned that you don't have to know everything, and you certainly look foolish if you try to pass yourself off as someone who knows everything. Which which then leads me to the other thing I've learned is that you have to depend on others, right? This is a very laboratory medicine a, is a whole career that's based upon, you know, the quest for learning and knowledge and service, really service to our patients. We have to. I've learned that you have to. I work best when I work collaboratively. Here in my current job, because we're a system laboratory, we have not only our reference lab, but we have many hospital laboratories across the state of New Mexico. We must work by consensus. We must work as teams, and that really resonates and with me and fits with how I like to work. So I think that's the thing that I would have advice I would have given to myself early on, is that you don't have to know everything and you need to depend on others.
Oh, I love that. And honestly, there's a lot of things that, I mean, we as, early careers and even mid-career people and even professor kind of level people within the field can benefit even from hearing information like that. So thank you for one, your time, and on behalf of SYCL 360, as well as SYCL, we really appreciate all your efforts that you have provided to the group and within the AACC. And thank you again, Dr. David Grenache, AACC's distinguished president. Thank you again.
It's my pleasure, Joe. Thank you so much for having me.